Do you even want to be in the video? Because it sounds like you do, but you're interrupting it.
This video is brought to you by Woodcraft.
I spent the last 4 days trying not to get crushed by a 1,700-pound oven. If you watched me in Seattle, you saw me build an outdoor kitchen so I could have farm-to-table dinners, but then I found out a week after I finished that we were moving across the country, so I got the opportunity to do it again, and this time I did it a whole lot bigger and a whole lot better.
Lucky for me, I live right up the street from Greg Pennington, who has his own sawmill and a ton of timber frame knowledge that he was happy to share with me for this project. I landed on a timber frame design because it would have the strength needed to hold up my 1,700-pound oven, but it was also going to teach me what I needed to know to build my next tiny house. More on that later. One really neat thing about having a friend with a sawmill is that you can create all the wood you need for a project like this from a single log. Because we sought our own lumber for this project, we wanted to get the thickest possible beams. But if you wanted to build a project like this at home, you could easily use big box store lumber and 4x4 posts. Of course, when you're using discount lumber of this nature, there's a little sweat equity involved. With the lumber fresh cut off the mill, it was time to bring it into Greg's shop and start building.
7 feet and then the back 2 feet.
We designed this project on the fly, which is the way that I always like to operate with projects like this. We knew what we needed to accommodate inside the pergola, and we knew what materials we had available, and we went from there. By the way, if you're interested in building a timber frame pergola like this, we have plans available on the website. Timber framing is a great way to learn basic woodworking joints using a small toolkit and a pretty low barrier to entry, low risk project because the margins on outdoor projects like this are much bigger than they are in a fine furniture shop. First, we had to make some giant mortise and tenon joints. This process was sped up quite a bit by the use of a skill saw to remove a lot of the waste, cleaned up with a timber framing slick, and the mortises were cut on Greg's mortising machine and cleaned up with a chisel by hand. While I love giant, fast-paced woodworking projects such as these, I love building alongside people that I love so much more. One of the main reasons that I moved to Tennessee was to be closer to friends like Greg and to spend the rest of my life building community and furniture simultaneously.
In this project, we only use a handful of tools: a skill saw to cut the sides of the joint, a timber framing slick to knock the waste out of the middle of the joint, a drill and bit to make room for the pegs, and you can actually carve the pegs by hand if you don't have a lathe. All of those tools are available through Woodcraft, the sponsor of today's video. Woodcraft also just did an in-depth interview about me and my life story, and you can find it on their blog, woodcraft.com. If you have woodworking questions you'd like answered, or if you want to get hands-on experience with a tool before you buy it, check out your local Woodcraft store or find Woodcraft online at www.woodcraft.com.
The majority of the strength for this structure comes from 2 frames. There's a mortise and tenon on top, and then a 45-degree cross brace is half lapped in and secured with some pegs. I always say that 2 heads are better than 1 when you're working on a project, and this was no exception. Especially one of those being Greg's made a whole lot of the head scratching on this project go a whole lot faster. It was also quite handy to have Greg around to help with all the heavy lifting on this particular project. The first frame was pretty easy because it was at the beginning of the day, but then once we'd finished it, we realized we had to make a whole other one, and the tired started to kick in. Did I mention that these parts are really, really heavy yet? Building this giant, sturdy structure with Greg, something that is going to outlive both of us as far as quality goes, is actually pretty symbolic of what I'm trying to do here in Tennessee. Put down deep roots, build strong relationships with our community, and live out our days doing things to help one another. Just for the time, knowledge, and sweat that Greg contributed to this project, I owe him a lifetime of free pizza, and I certainly hope he takes me up on it. His incredible depth of woodworking and timber framing knowledge made a lot of the head scratching on this project go a whole lot smoother.
Nice.
Once we'd built this thing, the monumental task of how we were going to get it from Greg's house to my house began. But there's very little you can't accomplish with a few ratchet straps, some ingenuity, and a tractor. By the time it was all said and done, this structure weighed almost as much as the wood-fired oven itself, so getting it here was a challenge, but we did it. The only last hurdle we had to figure out was how to get the wood-fired oven off of the pallet and onto the stand. But thank goodness Daniel Amick came to the rescue with his skid steer and an insane amount of skill with it. It was no small feat to lift the oven and put it into place without squishing anyone or without breaking the oven, but miraculously it got there, and oh boy did all this work make me hungry for some pizza.
If you're into cooking like I am, I have a whole playlist for you. Bread making, pizza making, pies, canning, all kinds of stuff. Check it out. If you like this video, make sure you're subscribed with the bell on. I post new videos every week. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers! Take my safety glasses off for a second. Remember, there's another half. Can't believe that.
That's really, I mean, I didn't think that story was going to end with, oh man.
That is not the way that I expected this story to. Who ordered a pizza oven that big? Why did I even think that it was a good idea to get one that was that big? Ow! Come on. If you've enjoyed any of my woodworking videos, you have Woodcraft to thank for it because they have sponsored my channel from the very beginning. Yep. I've been cooking since I was a kid. Yeah.